Hi, and welcome to Mama Time Yoga. My name is Charlotte, and today our practice is all about prenatal yoga for your pregnancy. So we'll be going through guidelines and modifications of prenatal yoga. So whether you've been practicing yoga for a while and you need to know how to modify your practice now, or you're brand new to yoga, this will really help you ensure that you practice safely through your pregnancy. So let's go ahead and get started in a comfortable seated position. So one of the biggest things to keep in mind when you're practicing yoga when pregnant is that you always want to keep plenty of space around the belly. One place where we can run into this is with twists. So it's best to avoid closed twists. Now what that means is anything where the belly is pressing into the body and there's not enough space for the belly to move. So a common pose would be when you're twisting into a cross leg like this. So my leg is pressing into my belly there. That's not conducive for a prenatal practice. So what we can do instead is just keep the legs crossed, or even go to a kneeling position and then twist from the shoulders there. So we're trying not to wring out the belly, but just focusing on twisting through the upper body, and you still got plenty of space around the belly. And maybe taking it to the other side if you like. Another thing to keep in mind is that you don't want to overstretch the belly. So any back bends and things like that. A common place that this comes up is even in cat-cow. Now I love practicing cat-cow in prenatal yoga, but you just have to keep in mind that, when you're normally practicing cow pose, you're really dropping the belly, lifting the tailbone up, arching through the spine as you open through the front of the body, and maybe even looking up. The way to modify this in pregnancy is to actually keep that pelvis and that tailbone in a neutral position, so you're not dropping the belly down, and it's a lot more subtle movement. So as you inhale, you're just gonna focus on pressing out of those hands, really opening up through the chest and shoulders, maybe looking up slightly, but you wanna avoid arching the back too much. And then as you exhale and you press into that cat pose, that's when you can find a bit more movement through the spine. So inhale, really subtle movement, lift the head to open up through the chest and shoulders. Exhale, press away round through the back body. Let's do that one more time just because it feels good. Open up through the chest and shoulders, nice neutral spine. Exhale, press away from the floor, round through the back body. Coming back to a neutral position from there. Another thing we want to avoid in pregnancy is laying on the belly. You might be fine to do that in those very, very early stages of pregnancy, but as you start to notice your belly, again, we don't want to put any pressure on the belly, so you don't want to lay on your belly, essentially. This can come up, especially in sun salutations, if you are at any point lowering onto the belly and going into cobra, or even avoiding up dog as well, as it will be too much of a stretch through the belly. So there's a couple of easy ways to modify with that. So let's just start our sun salutation. For example, inhale, let's lift the arms up. Exhale, let's hinge forward from the hips, folding over those legs as we normally would, keeping the feet nice and wide. Plenty of room for the belly. So instead of planting through the hands here and stepping back to our plank, what we can do instead is we can just inhale, hands to shins, flat back, shoulders drop down the spine. Again, focusing on opening through the chest and shoulders here. You can still draw the belly in. And then exhale, fold from here. Then you can plant the hands and step back and meet the rest of the students in downward facing dog if that's where the class is going. The other option is, again, from that forward fold position of our flow. If you would like to go into a plank, you still can. So step back to plank as you move further along in your pregnancy. You want to modify by dropping to those knees. You've got plenty of support. And instead of dropping all the way down to the belly or into up dog or cobra, you can just do a little bit of a push-up here. So elbows go straight back, lowering halfway, and then press yourself back up, and then move to downward facing dog. Beautiful. Coming back to stand just quickly, another thing you want to keep in mind is always keeping a wide base with the feet. So we want to avoid keeping the feet together in a really narrow stance, because as you get bigger through the belly, you're going to need a wider base to support you essentially. So just keeping that in mind, and always, again, making as much room as you need to, especially in those forward folds. You're going to want the feet really wide, probably as wide as your mat. So again, you've got plenty of room for that belly. Props are also really great to use as well, just to bring the floor closer to you. So for example, if I'm going into forward fold and my belly's starting to feel big, I'm not moving as quickly, of course. We'll touch on that a little bit more as well. But you got the feet nice and wide. You can just fold forward as much as comfortable for you. And again, bring the floor closer. So again, you're not having to be in any position that's not comfortable for you to be in, and you can easily get out of it as well. These are also really great in those lunge positions. Again, I'm going to keep my foot nice and wide, my front foot outside of my belly, but again, I can just bring the floor closer to me, so I'm not straining myself in any way. You can also use a chair. So chairs are perfect. So again, for folding forward, even on the blocks, that might not be comfortable at the end of your pregnancy. So having a chair to fold onto instead, you can keep the knees nice and bent, but you can just allow the upper body to release onto it without the pressure of folding forward. Sometimes that will feel like too much pressure to really fold over the legs. So a chair is such a great tool. You also can use the chair for balance. So turning it around to have the back of it next to you. And even in lunging positions and things like that, you can just have it for transitions, or even using it for balancing poses, any stretches where you might be standing. Just having it next to you is a really great resource. Your balance can get challenged as your pregnancy continues, and you just want to make sure you're safe from falling. So it's a good thing to have near you in case you need a little bit of support there. Another thing you want to be mindful of is moving really carefully through different postures. So as I've been showing you these examples, I've been moving a little bit quickly from folding forward to standing up. But as you move through your pregnancy, like I mentioned, your balance can start to get challenged, and also there can be changes in your blood pressure. So you might feel a little bit dizzy, especially moving from seated or folding forward, come into a standing pose, and vice versa. So you really want to take your time to move carefully. So again, having a chair to just give you a few more levels, or using the legs, and just taking your time as you move up and down and onto the mat can be very helpful just to keep you safe. Another thing that happens during pregnancy is that your body produces the hormone relaxin to get your body ready and open for birth, which essentially just softens everything, and it makes you a little bit more flexible. However, it also makes you prone to overstretching. So you want to be really mindful, especially in any sort of wide leg positions, that you're not overstretching. So it's actually recommended to only go to about 70% of what you feel like your maximum is for a stretch. This is not the time to push yourself to the max in pregnancy, so be really gentle and mindful even when you're stretching. On that same note, we want to keep our heart rate down as well. So again, it's hard to give a specific heart rate because it's different for everybody based on what your resting heart rate is and things like that. You want to avoid spiking that heart rate though, so a good test is the talk test. If you can carry on a conversation with someone that generally means that your heart rate is at a good level. Even more of a reason to move a little bit more mindfully and slowly through your transitions as well, because you may need to take a few breaths and get that heart rate back down if you have found that it's risen a bit. Also in your pregnancy, you want to avoid any abdominal contraction. So a place where this comes up is actually moving from seated onto your back. So you may be, before your pregnancy, comfortable just rolling straight onto your back or rolling up like that. And that's actually too much pressure on your abdominals. So what you want to do instead is roll to the side first, either way, whether you're coming from seated to lying or lying to seated, always roll to your side first, and then make your way down onto your arms, onto your side, and then roll onto your back. Same thing from the other way, rolling onto your side, and then pressing yourself up. And as you get further along into your pregnancy, it will actually start to become uncomfortable to lie on your back. At some point, it's not always the case for everybody, but even if you're not uncomfortable on your back towards the end of your pregnancy in your 3rd trimester, you still want to avoid laying on your back for too long of a period. So it can help to use props under your back, because you still want to be able to lie back and recline. So you can use a bolster, you can use pillows, blocks, just to prop yourself up a little bit. So this is what I've got. So this is what I'm going to show you, but you can use as many pillows, blocks, bolsters as you need. So you can see here, I've got my low back supported. I've got my head up and supported, so I can still relax back into a reclined position without being uncomfortable or putting too much pressure on my belly or the back of my body. And the last thing I want to touch on is just to avoid any active inversion. So those would be things like shoulder stand, headstand, handstand, things like that are pretty advanced poses. So if you have been practicing those previously, it's still recommended that after, the first couple months of pregnancy, that you refrain from doing those. You'll notice what feels good or what doesn't feel good in your body, of course. And if you're new to yoga, that's not something that you would start to learn in prenatal yoga. But what you can do instead is a more passive inversion that has so many of the benefits without any of the risks, and that is legs up the wall, which is actually my all-time favorite pose, but especially in pregnancy. So I'll show you a couple different modifications because it will look different through your pregnancy. Of course, trimester 1, you're probably more likely to be able to get those hips all the way to the wall. And then again, coming to your side first, and then rolling onto your back, and then extending those legs up and letting the legs and the heels rest onto the wall, letting your back relax onto the floor. And just enjoying all the benefits here, letting those heavy legs release. It's so nice at the end of the day on your feet, especially when you're pregnant. You can just allow your legs to release, and it helps alleviate heavy legs and feet and ankles, but also it helps to get the body in a nice rest and digest state to help you get ready for sleep and just calm down your nervous system. So as you get further along into your pregnancy, this will become less achievable. So you can start to move the hips further away from the wall so that your legs aren't straight up. They're more in like a V shape. And then also you can start to bring the upper body higher up as well. So just slowly starting to add more and more pillows to raise you up. And then, by your 3rd trimester, your legs up the wall will probably look more like this, in this beautiful V shape that you can relax into, where it's not so strenuous, but still nice and relaxing. I highly recommend doing that one in bed as well at the end of the day. Even just for a couple deep breaths, it can be a really nice way to end your day. So I hope this class has helped you understand some of the guidelines and modifications for pregnancy so that you can feel good in your yoga practice throughout your pregnancy. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more pre and postnatal yoga and mindfulness. I'll see you next time.